Hi, everybody. My name is Myles, and I'm with Peak Performers. Thank you so much for joining me today. I want to welcome to the show, we have John Castillo. He is an assistive technology specialist over at the Texas School for the Blind and Visually Impaired. You know, many people that I've met within the community might be familiar with disabilities, but a lot of them feel like they've never met a blind person before. And I feel like, to be fair, you probably have, right? There's such a spectrum of blindness that's out there. But what I wanted to do was to talk with John about the experience of being blind, and hopefully build some empathy for those folks that are blind and visually impaired within our community. Because so often people tell me, "Hey, Myles, I have X, Y, or Z disability, and I feel so alone. I feel like there's nobody else like me in the world that has that." And that's simply not true. There are many people in the world that share your experience and that you can connect to. So I hope that this is used as a catalyst for you doing just that. Having said all that, John, welcome. I'm so glad to have you.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Well, John, would you mind introducing yourself and telling us a little bit more about what you do professionally?
As you stated earlier, my name is John Castillo. I am an Assistive Technology Specialist here at the School for the Blind. That is my title. I teach students of all ages here how to use assistive technology, and that is a huge range from learning how to engage with mobile devices and laptops using screen readers like JAWS or VoiceOver. And what a screen reader does is it allows us as people who are blind to access and produce information. It gives us the tool to listen to what it is we are reading and what it is we are writing. I also teach students how to use Braille displays. So we have students whose primary reading and writing medium is Braille, and so we connect these displays to mobile devices and laptops. I also teach students how to use switches to navigate through mobile devices. They can be very simple to very complicated in how we set them up to be able to navigate through lists, how to make a selection, how to engage your assistant like Siri or the Google Assistant to ask a question or to dictate text. We also show our students how to use AI built into accessible applications like Seeing AI and Be My Eyes to describe their surroundings, to look for particular areas like doors or tables, to get this picture descriptions, to get barcode, to use the barcode and get information about products, to talk with someone live when they want a further description of what it is they're trying to look at or figure out.
That's such an important call out because I don't think most people realize just what a world of technology lies beneath the surface of things that we use every single day that are helping people that maybe can't see the screen be able to navigate and communicate on it. And it's really important that we ensure that all people, no matter their disability, have access to information, have access to communication, and have the ability to connect with people. It is a basic foundational human right. And much of the accessibility field that you see that is really focused around that is ensuring that people who are blind and visually impaired are able to access content on the internet. But I want to dig in a little bit more to you and your particular story, John. So, John, have you always been blind?
I was born totally blind. My mother contracted rubella in 1969 when she was pregnant with me. Worst case scenario, I was going to come out stillborn or severely impaired physically and intellectually. Best case scenario is what you see now. I'm low vision. Uh, Back in 1969, there wasn't a concrete test for testing vision of little kids or even testing for cataracts, which I was born with full grown cataracts. Within my third month of being born, my father noticed that I was not responding to visual cues,
Hmm.
whether it be him try to startle me or me trying to follow a light or just follow his finger. And so they took me to the doctor, and the doctor said, your son has cataracts. We need to remove them right away. Those 3 months of light, not just light deprivation, but just that optical sensory deprivation, uh, negatively affected my optic nerve. It didn't develop fully, and I have what you call optic nerve hypoplasia. Currently, I'm considered legally blind. My acuity is what you would call is 2200, and for people who don't know what that is, it's I see 20 over 200, which means what you see at 200 feet, I'd have to be at 20 feet to see with the same clarity.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought up that word right there, and that is the spectrum, because all disabilities exist within a spectrum, whether we realize it or not. And one of the first lessons that I had about that spectrum was visiting the Chris Cole Center for the Blind, which is just north of y'all. And they gave me this little handy piece of see-through equipment where it could simulate what it would be like to be various different kinds of blind. And so if you look through, and there might be different individuals that can't see through the center of their vision, or people that can't see on the periphery, or for some people it might be completely foggy, or some people it might be complete and total darkness too. But actually most people that are blind like you have some vision that's remaining. But it's also really important too that we teach the skills and tools for individuals to use, so that if their vision degrades any further, or just so that they can rely better off of consistent technology and consistent tools. What kinds of tools do people who are blind use to navigate the world?
Personally, I use several different tools. My most trusted is my magnifying glass. This little 5-power glass here. It has a light for when I want to see things in darker places. It extends and folds. I can keep it in my pocket. Now that I'm older, I try to have more than one, because I will put something down when a student walks in, or I have to go help somebody and forget about it. And then I will not remember where I put it. So I'll just reach in my backpack and grab another one and find the other one later under the couch. I also use a screen magnifier that's built into Windows called the Windows magnifier. And the way I activate that is by holding down the Windows key and pressing the plus key to get to fully magnify what's on my screen. And I adjust the magnification by using the keystrokes Windows minus and Windows plus. I also have everything on my phone and on my computer in dark theme. That means if I'm in a Microsoft Word Pro document, the background is black, the text is white. And now I do that because again, now that I'm older, I find that my vision starts to just kind of not be as strong as the day wears on. And having this dark theme available has really, really boosted my ability to just stay focused on what I'm reading. I use a screen reader. I use the JAWS screen reader. It's the gold standard. And so I use that sometimes without my magnifier. Most of the time, I just use it standalone, and I will just use that to read documents that are longer than 1 or 2 pages. And I can adjust the speed for comprehension level. If I'm skimming, I'll probably read at about 250 to 300 words a minute. If I'm reading for comprehension, I'll bring it down to a level of about maybe 200 words per minute. I use a Braille display. I happen to have one right here. This is a Focus 14. I connect this one with a phone. I love using it with an iOS device, an iPhone, or an Android, but I really mostly use it with the iPhone. And I can keep my phone in my pocket, have headphones on, and navigate through any of my apps. Not any of them, most of them that are accessible, and any menus, any list, and just listen to or read Braille. My Braille isn't the best in the world, so mostly I use it for navigation. I have a Focus 40 Braille display, which is It's a little bit bigger, and this is connected to my laptop right here. And I use this to also read and navigate, to try to really to just uh, be a little sharper on my braille, on my braille skills. If you don't use it, you lose it. And I also use this for training purposes. I try to stay up to date on changes to the braille display so that I can offer my kid the most up to date and just more ways to navigate and to access their information. Use a monocular for reading signs that are more than 20 feet away. I use apps on my phone like Seeing AI, Be My Eyes to get descriptions sometimes. Uh, Gosh, there's just a plethora of items that I use at home. I have my whole home, connected to Google. I love Google. I have a one smart speaker in the living room. I can use it to make queries, make phone calls, adjust lighting, turn off and uh, appliances, adjust the AC, which is really great because before I'd have to get my face into the screen to adjust it, or even set it from cool to heat, which was a chore because uh, the font on those little screens is probably about 4 point. I'd have to go, oh, I can tell that's cool because I see those two round circles, and that must be the double O. The advent of smart homes and wireless technology has really boosted my independence.
I think that a lot of these things are really cool for anybody, and it's particularly useful for you too. But that just really draws that tie of how so many accessible technologies led to widespread innovation. In fact, just last week I was talking about the proliferation of audiobooks and how audiobooks originally came from the Talking Books program that spun out of World War One. And this was so that blind individuals could be able to access literature and content. And these things that we often think about as, oh, well, everybody uses that, these oftentimes have very, very deep roots within the accessibility community, trying to solve a very human problem. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit more about your particular experience. So, you were born with vision loss and you've lived your life with vision loss. Um, I think that sometimes when we're talking about the disability lived experience, disability is such a diverse group of so many different people with so many different experiences that it can oftentimes feel to me like we're equating apples to oranges. Everybody experiences barriers, but one is a citrus and one is a crunchy snack for a
Mhm.
that you bake into a pie, right? And so I was wondering if you could speak to the experience, particularly of not only growing up, but then going and looking for a job as a blind person, and maybe some of the barriers that you encountered, along with hopefully maybe some guidance for employers that want to be more inclusive.
Growing up was very difficult. Assistive technology was just nowhere to be found when I was a kid. I feel like and then I grew up in a rural town. I grew up in Lockhart, Texas. I had a teacher of the visually impaired who was assigned to me, but she had more than one student that to work with in her region. Uh, I started getting services when I was 6 years old, first grade. The first My first piece of assistive technology was a huge magnifier. It was probably about 12 inches in diameter, and it had a light, and it was affixed to a desk that was taller than me. So I had to kind of stand on a chair. They gave it to me, but no one showed me how to adjust the height
Mm.
or for focus. The first time I put a book under the magnifying glass, it wasn't it still wasn't big enough because there was such a gap between the book and the actual glass that I really couldn't read anything. And
Mm.
so then they had to come in and unscrew it and make it a little lower. And it took about, man, well, I was 6 years old. So what felt like a year was probably 3 weeks before they finally got it to where I could see. But as thankful as I was to be able to read, now I'm reading like this, you know, and standing on a chair or and later on they were able to put it on a much smaller desk, but I really couldn't fit correctly. My posture was not good, and so it just wasn't a good fit. The second thing they gave me was a handheld magnifier, was a little better, but it just wasn't strong enough. And again, I was looking down. I did, I, I I wasn't able to just maintain proper posture, and I got really tired really fast. Lighting wasn't the best. They gave me everything from a clear yellow sheet of paper to put over what we call those mimeograph sheets back then, which was purple on white, to make things brighter. I was given a monocular to read the board, uh, and that wasn't until I was in 10th grade. My strategy before that was to either walk up to the board, read and memorize as much as I could, come back to the board, and then write down everything I saw or could remember, and go and then rinse and repeat until I had everything copied uh, onto my page. My other strategy was to take my very thick glasses that I had and move them away from my eye and use them kind of like a monocular to where I could uh, magnify what was on the board, uh, and try to read that way and then write. And that, of course, had its drawbacks because that all depended on where I was sitting in the classroom. And most of the times I was sitting in the front, but it still wasn't a good enough distance for me to be able to use that strategy. The monocular really did open up my just my access to printed material. I would I The first one I got was an 8 power, and I could be sitting maybe 10, 15 feet away from the board, and I was able to read math problems, read whatever was up there, do my work, go back and read. It was a work in progress. It was really really outstanding. I loved it because not only did I have access to what was in my classroom, but I could also read signs that were far away from me. I could be at a basketball game, and I could keep up with what's going on the court. I could see the scoreboard. I could identify people coming into the gym if I was looking for a friend or two. It just really boosted my level of access to information. With me, when I would go in and I would fill out a job application, and immediately the whether it be the manager of a grocery store or at a Burger King, they would see that I'm looking down very close, or I had the paper right here or my magnifier, trying to read the application and fill out text. They would take my application, but I would immediately they would either just drop it or say, "Oh, we'll get back to you." I was in between jobs and getting a job at a call center where I would, it wasn't soliciting; it was just taking calls from people, entering information, and then moving on to the next call. I sat down and I was on some training screens. They noticed that there was no accessibility on these computers. This was back in '97. Uh, as soon as I started putting my face in the screen, about an hour later, they came back and said, "You know what? We made a mistake. We have more than enough people."
Oh.
I got my first job because I had a friend who worked at a Walgreens,
Hmm.
and he was an assistant manager, and his boss was looking to hire somebody for a part time, and he got me an interview. Uh, the manager, the job was 10 hours a week, uh, keeping up with the Hallmark, the greeting card section, and she said, "I was going to give this job to a deaf girl, but you will do." And so, it was kind of a backhanded compliment of, you know, 1 second I'm seething because she actually said that to me, but the the more practical part of my brain said, "Slow down, John. She's offering you a job." And so I took it. That job lasted a week because during the week she was just giving me these little assignments. Like one of the first ones was, "Hey, can you see those two stacks of 2-liter sodas over there?" And I said, "Yeah. Can you move those over to the soda aisle on aisle 7?" And so I really didn't know the layout. And I said, "Sure." And I just asked her, where's aisle 7? And she pointed in the general direction. So I took the dolly. moved them over there. And then she said, "Can you stock those for me?" Yeah, sure. After about a week, she said, "I need you for other things in the store. Would it be okay? So would it be okay if we increase your hours to about 15 or 20 hours a week, and uh, and you work in the stock room on the floor?" And man, I was very, very confused because she was asking me if it's okay for them to increase my hours. And in my head, I'm thinking, yeah, of course. Yes, I want more hours. After about 3 months, I was working in the cameras department, and I use my magnifier for everything. If if I got on the bus and found that I didn't have my magnifier with me, I would get off, go back home, grab it, and this was very rare because I had make sure I had it with me or I had one at work. I would have to take a cab so I wouldn't be late. There was one time when I didn't have my magnifier and I was working the cash register, and this gentleman comes up with some Oscar Mayer lunch meat, and I'm trying to get the light right to read
Yeah.
the price tag, and I have it up here to my nose, and he goes, "Why are you smelling my meat?" And I told him, "Sir, I'm sorry, I'm blind, I'm low vision, I forgot my magnifying glass. I'm just trying to read the label." And so he says, "No, there's something wrong with the meat. I don't want that one." And so he put it to the side and went and got another. And then I had I was in the camera department filling out a camera order. Back then, people used to drop their 35 millimeter or 110 film, and we would develop them. We would develop it for them, and I was down here filling out the envelope, and the district manager comes in, and he goes straight to my boss, and I heard him. He goes, "Why is that guy sleeping at the counter in front of a
Mm.
customer?" And she says, "Oh no, he's not sleeping. He's blind." And then
Huh.
she goes, "Well, what's he doing here?"
I think that many individuals that encounter the kinds of barriers that you experience and with such frequency and such overt exclusion, I think that many of them would feel pretty downtrodden. But I also know that you work with a lot of young people that have all the hope in the world and they have all the bright futures ahead of them too. So, what do you say to people, and what did you say to yourself to keep yourself motivated and stay positive about the world? Because you are such a happy person. I feel it emanating from you right now.
Humility and confidence have been and continue to be my two greatest strengths. The person who should know most about your disability, your needs, your wants, your capabilities, and your weaknesses is you. You know, and don't be afraid to make a mistake in front of other people. Everybody makes mistakes at work.
So let me ask you, like, how has blindness kind of uniquely crafted your life and given you that really cool and essential set of skills that you rely on to this day?
I grew up in a small town. I didn't want to be known as the blind kid, and so I did everything I could to uh, be known for everything else. When I left high school and got into college, I quickly learned that, man, uh, in the world, in the real world outside of adolescence, people are really interested about who you are as far as a disabled person.
Hmm.
When they asked me questions, it was, I'd say 9 times out of 10, it was out of genuine curiosity. I remember being 16, 17, even 20, being afraid to pull out my monocular in front of people, or to read in front of people just because I didn't want people to look at me differently or treat me differently because it happened in the past. But then, man, I started, you know, I got older and I started going out to places where the lighting wasn't the best or menus weren't right in front of me. They were behind people on boards. And so, man, out of necessity, I started having to pull out my monocular and read from afar or pull out my magnifier so I could read things. I met a lot of people that way. People are just so interested, and most of them, like I said, is really because they want to know. They
Yeah.
and they just said, I've never encountered someone who's low, like legally blind. They would say, I was looking for your stick, and I go, you mean my cane? And
Yeah.
even then, I had to become more comfortable in my own skin. I had to I had to learn how to adjust to my blindness, and I'm still adjusting. I'm 56 now, and uh, there are always new situations that are going to test my capacity for being patient, for learning,
Mm.
for being an ambassador for blindness. Uh, I think I was maybe or 40 when I finally was comfortable with walking around with the cane. Um, and it's a testament to the other people who I've met who are blind, who are just they're just so confident and they do their job so well.
I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and this might actually run the risk of potentially unnerving some of the viewers. But I think that it was a really important topic that you had brought up in our last conversation, and I wanted to highlight it. And that is the topic of representation within the disability employment space and service providers. Because what happens, as you pointed out to me, is that a lot of times there might be people without disabilities that are in various different nonprofits, service providers, et cetera, that are delivering services to those individuals with disabilities, when ironically, the person that has a disability might actually be a bit better qualified because they have that lived experience. The challenge is that I've met many of these people, I work with many of these individuals on a regular basis, and I know that they're the kindest people in the world. I know that they come from a good place, and a lot of times they have deep roots to the cause, and they have personal individuals that have focus their energy towards making the world a better and more accessible place. How do we actually get more people with disabilities and all kinds of disabilities into roles not only within these service providers, but also within leadership?
The field of blindness is the only one where you don't have to know anything about it to be hired. I currently work in an area. I work where here and at my other job at Chris Cole, where we've hired teachers who didn't know Braille or didn't know anything about blindness, but because they had a degree of some kind, uh, they were hired into these roles, these teaching roles that are highly impactful to people with blindness. I would, and what I compare it to is to taking your car to a mechanic who just got hired because they've driven a car before. You just wouldn't do that. You want somebody, you want the person that's working on your car to know how to take apart an engine. I would say the best where we could start is by uh, modernizing our our education system, the blindness education system. Right now, uh, a lot of what's being taught in regards to blindness is antiquated, and it was a lot of content has been created by sighted people on behalf of blind people. I would say the best way to rectify a lot of these situations where you have uh, I'm not going to say incompetence, but lack of knowledge would be by hiring competent blind people, not just any blind people, but hiring competent blind people. And I would say, just like, if you had a class in women's history uh, throughout the century. Let's say there was a class in 20th century women's history. You wouldn't hire a woman just because she was a woman. You would hire a really competent woman to teach that class. Somebody who has proven that they know the material. We also need to have those who are in positions of authority have a little more trust in people who are blind. And if you do hire somebody who is blind in whatever capacity in whatever job, not even the field of blindness. If you hire a a lawyer who's blind or an engineer who's blind, don't lower the expectations. Don't don't assume that, oh, they're late because they're blind, or they haven't kept up with the work because they're blind. If what they're doing is fully accessible, and they've demonstrated to you that they can do the job with the accommodations, then the standards should remain the same.
I oftentimes preach how most accommodations that individuals encounter are free or low cost. And there are some of those instances within the blind community and the different tools that they use, but some other tools that they use will cost a business money. And yet, that accommodation has value, and just simply including that person within your organization has inherent value to you, and they bring value to the organization, and the accommodation is worth it.
In hindsight, had I been more comfortable with my adjustment to blindness, I probably would have had my cane right there next to me at the register, and the gentleman wouldn't probably have to ask why I'm smelling his meat, or my, or my or the district manager wouldn't ask why I was sleeping.
Real quick before we go, I would love it if you would tell me a little bit more for about the Texas School for the Blind, the community that it serves, and if somebody is watching this right now that has a blind child, how would they go about engaging with your school?
We serve children across the state of Texas, and most of our students here are because they, for one reason or another, couldn't get the level of service they need to be successful in their school districts. A lot of the students we serve here have multiple disabilities. Blindness isn't what's keeping them from being served. It's maybe a combination of physical and intellectual disabilities. Most students in the state of Texas will come here for a short-term program. Let's say they need a week of intensive assistive technology, whether it be with a screen reader or screen magnifier, or if they need some help with some math or some kind of literacy tools, they will come here to our various short-term programs. We do have some rare cases where we have students who are in maybe more rural areas who are taking very advanced courses like calculus, physics, you know, and the school and or the teacher of the visually impaired just doesn't have much experience with that level of academia, and so they will come to the School for the Blind, and with support from our math specialists or our science specialists, will go to the high school around the corner and take those type of courses in a public school setting. If you as a parent really feel that your child would benefit from coming here, I would really consider trying to find an advocate, a blindness advocate who could work with you as a parent through the ARD process for referring a student over here.
Thank you very much for coming on the show. And again, this has been Myles from Peak Performers. This has been My Disability Story, signing off for now. Bye.
Goodbye. Hook 'em.